spoiler alert, I'm going back to Australia. I'm so excited. Anyway. Hello, my name is Megan. Welcome back to my channel, Megan Chan Vlogs, where I talk about fitness, travel and dogs. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to backpack the east coast of Australia. So, it's been like a long time since I did a sit down video. So the last long form content that will be on my channel is the unpack with me after 3 months of travel in Southeast Asia and Australia. It is now February in the UK and it's dark and it's raining and snow is forecast later in the week. So what better time to talk about backpacking the east coast of Australia? In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to backpack the east coast of Australia. There are largely two ways to backpack the east coast, so you can either do it on your own, and that'll be the things that I'm going through today, or you can do it with a company where the company organises everything for you. So you either backpack it solo or with a friend and the company's organised it for you, or you backpack it like with a group within that company. So companies include Welcome to Travel, My Adventure Project and Ultimate are the ones that I know about, and then also the tour companies like Contiki and G Adventures and things like that. However, I'm going to be talking about how to backpack the east coast of Australia on your own. I mean, you're never on your own because if you stay in hostels, you will meet people, but how to do it sort of without the help of a company. So I went to Australia in British summer 2023. So from June to the end of August, I was in Australia, which is Australian winter. So this was fine at the top of the east coast, so it's hotter at the top of Australia than it is at the bottom of Australia. However, in Tasmania it was snowing, it was minus temperatures, it was snowing at the top of Mount Wellington. So that's the temperature it was when I went. From like Noosa upwards it was really warm, so it was fine. So the places that I went to, I flew from Thailand to Melbourne. I then had a few days in Melbourne, then hired a car and did the Great Ocean Road. I then drove back to Melbourne, flew to Tasmania, had about a week in Tasmania and hired a car, drove around. Would highly recommend if you're going to Tasmania, not that I'll include it in this video, but if you're going to Tasmania, hire a car because the public transport is pretty much non-existent, even in the city. I then flew from Tasmania up to Sydney, where I met Rihanna, my sister, and we did the rest of the travels together. We were in Sydney, then we hired a car to drive to the Blue Mountains. From there we went to Amaima Beach on the coast where I had a surf lesson from a friend I met in South America, and we went up to Newcastle. From Newcastle we drove back down to Sydney and flew to Maroochydore, which is the airport near Noosa. We then got a bus to Noosa, had a few days in Noosa, got the bus back to Maroochydore airport to hire a car, drove down to Brisbane, had a few nights in Brisbane, and then dropped the car at Brisbane airport, flew to Proserpine airport, which is Airlie Beach airport. So we stayed at Airlie Beach, did the Whitsundays on a boat, and then got the Greyhound up from Airlie Beach up to Townsville to get the boat out to Magnetic Island. After Magnetic Island we got the boat back to the mainland and got a Greyhound up to Cairns, and we finished our east coast trip in Cairns, and later we flew to Perth to go and see the quokkas. So that's a brief summary of what I did in Australia, up the east coast of Australia. I absolutely loved Australia. So they have like really outdoorsy vibes. I like doing a lot of exercise and people in Australia seem to like that as well. The coffee is excellent. I had like one bad coffee in the month and a half that I was there. Norway, don't have coffee in Norway, horrendous. The coffee in Australia, incredible. The sushi in Australia is beautiful. It's like Western European prices there. So before I went to Australia, I was really concerned about how expensive it was going to be, but we're in a cost of living crisis at the moment in England, so actually it wasn't that expensive. Things that were more expensive: citrus fruits, randomly.
Limes are well expensive.
Crisps and alcohol as well. They grow a load of grapes, but their alcohol's quite expensive. Eating out wise is similar to current UK prices, maybe a bit cheaper, but the portions are smaller. But then I feel like when you eat out here at the moment, the portions are massive. The hostel prices, so I'll come on to hostels a little bit later, but the hostel prices are similar to like Western European prices. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. Obviously it's nicer weather. Things can like bite you, but we went in Australian winter, so there was less of that. You can't really get a cup of tea past 2 p.m. in a cafe because they've closed, but you can get one at 6 a.m. if you want. So there's that. And yeah, it's just like a more chilled out lifestyle. Can you tell that I want to move to Australia? I'm not going to, but I would like to. So when you're planning your Australia trip, when would you go? So I'm going to base it on their seasons. So they have the same seasons as Britain, but the opposite way around, obviously, because they're on the other side of the world. So their summer is like our winter. So their summer is like now. So December, January, February. So they're going to be the hottest months, which sounds good. However, Australian heat is like hot heat. Like you burn through factor 50. Their heat is just something else. And also the further north you get, the more humid it gets, and the more likely there is to be like storms and cyclones, because you're in the tropics. When you're above, I think, Airlie Beach or Agnes Water, you're in the tropics. So bear that in mind. We went in Australia in winter and like it was freezing in the Blue Mountains. Like it was -3. It was freezing in the Blue Mountains. But apart from that, it was fine. We went like in the middle of their winter, and Sydney was like a little bit chilly, but it was like British spring. And then, as I said, when we got to Noosa and upwards, we were in shorts and t-shirt most of the time. And also, if you go in their winter, there's less bugs and there's less stingers in the sea as well. So that's nicer. So it just depends on what you want. Also, I really like running, so I can't really run in the heat. So that didn't take full advantage of that, and their park runs were still at
7 a.m.
But I'd say it depends on what weather you want, what weather you're used to. But yeah, just bear in mind, if you go in their summer, there are lots of rains, things flood. It's really hot, like really hot, you burn. But yeah, you get like the hottest weather if that is what you're after. So first I'm going to talk about transport. Australia's massive, like it's massive. Like if you put the outline of Australia over a map of Europe, it pretty much covers the whole of Europe. Like it is huge. It's got a third of the population of the UK, but it is ginormous. Most people, I say most people with no data to back this up. However, having met travellers going up the East Coast, a lot of people do the Greyhound bus. So the Greyhound bus is a red bus that runs up and down the East Coast, and it runs like into the middle a little bit. And there's also one going down from Darwin down to Uluru, Alice Springs as well. There isn't a Greyhound on the West Coast, unfortunately. I really hope that they bring that in. But the Greyhound is a coach. It has Wi-Fi, like where you can get service. It has Wi-Fi, it has air conditioning, it has reclining seats, it has toilets, and it has meal breaks. So the Greyhound bus is like a hop-on, hop-off service. You can either buy tickets individually, or you can buy a pass. So you can buy a pass for the amount of days that you're there, and the pass, read the fine print, but it allows you to travel in any direction. As long as you've got the East Coast Wimmet pass, you can travel in any direction, or you can get there's another pass that's like the whole, not just the East Coast, the Uluru bit as well, but I can't remember the name of that. So you buy, if you buy your ticket, that's straightforward. If you buy the pass, you then go onto their website to book onto a specific coach, and you can book your seat on it so you know where you're sat. And I think you can change that up to like the day before the departure, maybe even closer if you've got a more flexible ticket. But it's a really good way of just getting up and down the East Coast. It stops at all the main tourist places where people want to go. And yeah, really straightforward, really good. You can also hire a car or hire a camper van. So we hired cars going up the East Coast. We were going to hire a car and road trip the whole thing, but the issue is because you start in New South Wales and end like in North Queensland, it's quite expensive to do a one-way hire, because they then have to relocate the car back to New South Wales because it's got a New South Wales number plate on. So we just hired it for bits. Camper vans, quite a lot of people, again no data to back this up, quite a lot of people do the East Coast up, so start in Melbourne or Sydney, end in Cairns. So if you get like a relocation camper where you take it down the East Coast, you don't have as many days to do it, but because it's a less popular direction to do it, you can get it cheaper. So you can look up relocation campers. And then internal flights in Australia are quite cheap as well. So the two main companies that we came across were Jetstar and Virgin Australia. Jetstar is like the Ryanair of Australia. You can take 7 kilos on. They charge you for, no, they don't charge you for water. You can have a free drink of water. They charge you for tea, they charge you for coffee. I'm surprised they don't charge you to go for a wee. It's like those sort of vibes. The staff are very, very pleasant, but it's very much a budget airline. And then you've got Virgin Australia, so it's just like a nicer experience. It's a little bit more expensive, not much to be fair, but those are the two main companies. There are other ones as well, like Qantas that do internal flights, but they're expensive. Snacks are very good on Qantas though, so you know, it's what you want, isn't it? But we did internal flights. When I go, spoiler alert, I'm going back to Australia. I'm so excited. Anyway, when I go back to Australia, I'm doing one internal flight. So I'm gonna go Sydney up to Noosa and then fly from Noosa back to Sydney. Instead of, I don't want to greyhound it all the way back, that'd be long. So that is like 3 different ways that you can do the transport. Hostels wise, so this is mainly geared towards people who are going to be staying in hostels. So there are chains of hostels up the East Coast. So there's the YHA Hostel Association, like the YHA all over the world. They're more like old, I don't want to say older people, I'm classing myself in this, like people in their 30s, but it's like less party vibes in the YHAs. And then you've got nomads are more party vibes. And then you've got like smaller chains, so things like Wake Up. So there's a Wake Up in Sydney, Wake Up in Bondi, Wake Up in Byron. But what I like about the hostels in Australia, they have activities so you can make friends if you're traveling on your own. Hostels are like they're basic, mostly in Australia. They're you know, you can go to Southeast Asia and get like a bougie hostel rooms with like you've got a pod and a like a curtain. They don't really do curtains in the hostels in Australia. There are some pod dorms. We stayed in a pod one in Sydney, and the facilities were fine, the beds were fine. The people were the most unfriendly people I've ever met in a hostel. So, you know, most hostel rooms have like a socket by your bed and a light by your bed and lockers, but it's like, you know, when it's like a bunk bed that moves whenever someone like turns over, it's one of those. So you won't get as much for your money as you do in Southeast Asia, but then, you know, it's Australia and not Southeast Asia. So dorms in Australia. So backpacking up the East Coast is relatively easy to do, especially if you speak English. And because of this, there are a lot of young backpackers up the East Coast. And like the scenes are quite party scenes. And even if you're in a female only dorm, I've heard lots of stories about potentially people who are not females coming into the dorm and doing things that potentially you might not want to hear about in a dorm, if you get my meaning. So just bear that in mind. When I go back to Australia this time, I'm going to be staying in hostels, but like largely private rooms for this reason. Like I need my sleep. I don't want to be hearing that sort of carry on when I'm trying to sleep, you know. Booking wise, I personally use booking.com because I've used them loads in the past, so I've got like a genius level, so it's a lot cheaper. You can also use Hostel World, or you can book direct with the hostels as well. So now I'm going to talk about routes up the East Coast. So you've got your Greyhound bus pass sorted. You've got an idea of where to look for hostels. Now I'm going to go through the places. So if you're going in low season, so they're winter, as long as there's not any public holidays, you don't have to book them too far in advance. We were booking them sort of like half a week in advance. It's not like the same day that you can do in Asia. I mean, you can rock up, and if you don't care what hostel room you're in, then, you know, you can book it sort of the day before. However, in the high season, in Australia in their summer, things get booked up so quickly, and around like Christmas and Easter and schoolies, where they leave school and they have parties. Whenever that is, Tanvia, I'll put it on the screen. That gets booked up as well. But just bear that in mind. Quite a lot of the hostels are free cancellation, so if you do change your mind, you can cancel before you go. But do be mindful that it does book up really quickly. So I'm going to start at the bottom, go to the top. I'm going to start in Melbourne. Quite a few people start their East Coast trip in Sydney, but I'm going to start in Melbourne because that's where I started mine. So I flew into Melbourne, and you then there is a bus called Sky Ride, something like this. You buy the ticket at the airport, and the bus takes you into the centre of Melbourne. It's absolutely fine. So Melbourne feels very European. So I just spent 3 weeks in Thailand, landed in Melbourne, and I was like,
on my way, I'm in London.
So it's just like a European city. There's high buildings, there's a largely efficient tram system, and yeah, it's just like European vibes. I'm glad I went to Melbourne. I wouldn't go back. Like, it's fine, it's just a city. It was really nice because I got to meet my friend April there, who I met in Southeast Asia in 2017. But like, it's fine, it's a city. Although loads of people I talk to who are British and who moved to Australia live in Melbourne because they love the vibe there. The weather in Melbourne is 4 seasons in a day, so it can be 40 degrees in the morning and then 10 in the afternoon. It's just a bit too hit and miss weather-wise. But it is, you know, if you're interested in cities and stuff, it has the State Library of Victoria in Melbourne, and it is the best of the state libraries of Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland and Western Australia. So if you're into libraries, I'd advise going there. But you can get to the Great Ocean Road from Melbourne. So it's a coastline that goes west from Melbourne towards Adelaide. And it's just beautiful views the whole way, you know. You've got like Apollo Bay, you've got the 12 Apostles, you can go inland to the Grampians as well. It's just nice vibes, you know, it's nice vibes. So that's also an option from there. There's also a place called Phillip Island off Melbourne that's got penguins. I didn't go there, but the penguins are cute. So from Melbourne, you can either fly or you can get an overnight Greyhound to Sydney. So I'm not really a city person, but I really like Sydney. You've got the things like Sydney Harbour Bridge, you've got the Opera House. There's so many lovely beaches. So it's like Bondi, there's Manly, there's Bronte, really lovely beaches. And then you've also got the Blue Mountains, which is like a day trip away from Sydney. You can do overnight, but you can just do tours that just go for the day. And it's just, you've got the Three Sisters lookout, and it's just beautiful. Like everything's blue because of the eucalyptus, and it's nice vibes, it's nice vibes. And then there's also a Taronga Zoo, I think, in Sydney. I didn't go to the Taronga Zoo, but I am querying it for when I go back. So hostels wise in Sydney, I've mentioned the Wake Up hostels. So there's one in Sydney Central and one in Sydney Bondi. So these hostels, they've got either dorm rooms or private rooms, and it's just real nice vibes because they've got activities on every day. The one in Sydney Central has Sidebar, which is like a club under the hostel that apparently you can't hear, but like it's nice that you're kind of like at home, so you don't have to go out to go to a club. So yeah, I haven't been, but I've seen very good reviews. Also there's some YHAs there. And then up the coast from Sydney is a place called Newcastle. So Newcastle is in like our Newcastle in the northeast. The coastline looks really similar as well, which is very strange. It looks like Northumberland. Not many people actually go there, it seems. It doesn't seem to be on many people's lists, but it's just a really nice town. You've got nice beaches. I got my nails done there, which obviously, you know, you don't need to do, but it's a nice place to be. We stayed at YHA Newcastle Beach, which was lovely. And then there's a few places up the coast. So there's Port Stephens, Ballina, which has a huge prawn. I want to check that out. And also Coffs Harbour. So these are like seaside towns going up the east coast between Sydney and Byron Bay. I haven't been to any of them. They look nice on Google Maps. I don't think they're as popular as Sydney and Byron Bay, but if you've got longer and you're wanting a stop off on the way, if you want to not get an overnight bus and break up the journey, then those are options. Also up the coast is a place called, and I don't know how to pronounce it, it's like Arawara. It's called Spot X, and there's a surf camp there, and I'm gonna go and do a surf camp there, so I'm excited about that. But if you just want to go straight up to Byron Bay, there is an overnight bus that you get from Sydney to Byron Bay, so the Greyhound bus. Byron Bay is apparently, I've not been to Byron Bay, but it is apparently like chill vibes, hippie vibes. So there's beautiful beaches, there's dolphin kayaking that everyone seems to do. There's a bar where this guy plays the piano and he like just plays any requests on the piano. There's a lighthouse. So Byron Bay is the most easterly point on the mainland of Australia. So you get the sunrise there first. So I'm hoping to do a sunrise walk to the lighthouse. Hopefully this is gonna be a day where it's not cloudy, and just see the sunrise, like come over Australia. And then there's also tours. So there's like a brewery tour there, and there's a behind the bay tour. That might be the same as the brewery tour. Oh no, where you get to see like waterfalls and stuff. But I'm just gonna go there for like chill vibes and to see the sunrise is my plan. Then up the coast from Byron Bay, you've got Surfers Paradise. So this is like on the beach, as Surfers Paradise would suggest, but it's also got like massive high-rise buildings, and I think it's got the tallest building in Australia. Apparently it's good for shopping, obviously also good for surfing. It's not really my bag because it looks too much city-ish, but there are some nice spots around there, like national park vibes that you can walk to, well, like get transport to and then walk around. So that's one up from Byron Bay. Next up from Surfers Paradise is Brisbane. So I think this has like a bad name because people are like,
Don't bother with Brisbane.
I personally really like Brisbane. We did go in, as I say, in British summer, so Australian winter, but it was like mid-20s. So they've got a lagoon. Brisbane's not actually on the coast, it's inland. But it's got a lagoon that you can like lie by, and it's clean, like it's maintained and it's clean. You've also got Moreton Island and Stradbroke Island, I think they're called, that you can do day trips to from Brisbane. Australia Zoo as well you can get to from Brisbane. Would highly recommend Australia Zoo. It's Steve Irwin Zoo, and it's just excellent. And then there's also a koala sanctuary in Brisbane as well. There was also a vegan bakery in Brisbane, which I know doesn't appeal to everyone, but I'm gonna be going back there. And the south bank of Brisbane's really nice with the sign and stuff. Yeah, I really like Brisbane. And then, next up from Brisbane is Noosa. So Noosa is where I want to live. So it's a little like beach town. like 2.5 hours north of Brisbane on the Greyhound. And you've got the beach, beautiful Noosa beach where you can surf. So past Agnes Water, which is like north of Noosa, you can't actually surf because I'm presuming like sharks and lack of surf, I'm presuming. You've got the beach, you've got the national park, there's a hike that you can do the national park, there's the famous fairy pools where it's like water gets trapped and then it comes in. I mean, it all looks very dangerous, but the beautiful pictures for Instagram. And you can do the national park hike to Sunshine Beach. There's the Everglades as well, which are mirrored waters. There's only 2 Everglades in the world. The other one's in Florida, full of alligators or crocodiles or something very snappy. So you don't wanna go there. And you've got the markets, the Umundi markets as well. And it's just nice vibes. So that's Noosa. We stayed in the YHA Hostel Lodge, which is in Noosa Heads, and I think it's the only hostel in Noosa Heads because most of them are in Noosaville, which is like where the Greyhound drops you off. Noosa Heads is the bougie bit, but I think it's closing for refurb based on their availability on booking. However, there's a new YHA in the Everglades. It's called Kangaroos, which we love a pun. And it's on the Everglades and it's like a little hut. The famous hostel that you probably see on the photos from Noosa is Bounce. Very bougie hostel, and it's got a swimming pool with a see-through wall. Bit of a party place, I think. And then there's also a Nomads, but the cleanliness for the Nomads gets bad reviews on booking and stuff, so. And then next up from Noosa is Gari or Fraser Island. So you can either do, you have to do it as like an organised tour sort of situation in 4x4s. You can either do this from Noosa or you can do it from Rainbow Beach. So quite a lot of people get the Greyhound from Noosa up to Rainbow Beach to do Gari, Fraser Island. It's like Gari is its proper name. Fraser Island is the name that it got when it was invaded, but it is now officially back to Gari. But yeah, this is like normally a 2-night, 3-day tour, and you do it in like 4x4s. They call them like tag-along tours because you follow the person in front. If you're 21 and over and have a driving licence that's written in English, you can drive the 4x4 as well. There's options such as like camping. I'm planning to go on one that doesn't involve camping, but involves being in a bed. We love that. So yeah, that'll be the next thing up the coast. You can then get another overnight Greyhound from either Noosa or Rainbow Beach up to Airlie Beach. So Airlie Beach is the gateway for the Whitsundays. So the Whitsundays are how many islands? I'm gonna put on screen, like many islands off the east coast of Australia, and they are beautiful. So there's Whitehaven Beach, which is like it's white sands, and there's like some sort of rays, like manta rays maybe in the water, but it's just like, it's beautiful vibes. So you can go on a day trip to the Whitsundays from Airlie Beach, or you can do an overnight trip, or you can stay on a boat overnight. I went on a boat, like stayed on a boat overnight, and I felt sick for about 2 weeks afterwards. But I think that was more of a me problem than the boat problem. The big party boat that goes out to the Whitsundays is called the Atlantic Clipper. It's got like a slide off it. You can go snorkeling, you can go diving, but I went for like less party vibes. Airlie Beach itself is actually really nice as well. So it's got another lagoon. We sat on a bit of the beach, but it's not like a big beach. There's also like a boardwalk that you can go along as well, which is like, it's nice. It's just like a little coastal town. And then from Airlie Beach, the next stop up that some people do is a place called Ayr, A-Y-R, where you can go and scuba dive a famous wreck, but I couldn't scuba dive, so we didn't go there. So we went up to Townsville next. So Townsville is, no one really stays in Townsville, but you go to Townsville to get the ferry to Magnetic Island. Now, Magnetic Island is so beautiful, it's so cute. I've done like a whole video on these different places. We stayed at a place called Sea Stay, which was at the bottom of Magnetic Island in Picnic Bay. There's also, so you get into Nelly Bay, which is like on the east of, is it on the east? Yes, pretty sure it's on the east of the island. So below that is Picnic Bay, and then halfway between Nelly Bay and Picnic Bay is the Nomads Hostel that is like quite a famous hostel on Magnetic Island, and you look out like over the sea and they're like little teepee hut things. They've got a swimming pool. And then up in Horseshoe Bay, which is like the top of the island, they've got the Selina Hostel, which used to be the YHA Bungalow Bay, I think. And they've got like a little koala sanctuary there. Lovely vibes. Magnetic Island is beautiful. Like there's a bus service that runs up and down. It gets really full, but like it's there and it's cheap. You need cash for those buses. You can hire 4x4s on the island, which is what a lot of people do. You need to be over the age of 21 if you're international with a driving licence in English. There's one part that you can't get to on the bus called West Point because you need a 4x4 to get there. Oh, there's also rock wallabies at Arcadia Bay, which are really cute. And there's a Forts Walk, which is like a walk and you see loads of koalas. Like Magnetic Island is just such nice vibes. It's really chill. Would highly recommend, like don't miss out of your trip. And then next up from there is a place called Mission Beach. We didn't go there, but I think people go there for like adrenaline type, like whitewater rafting, skydiving sort of vibes. And then the last stop on most people's East Coast trip is Cairns. So Cairns is at the top of Queensland. Well, not at the top, but like near the top of Queensland. There's quite a bit to do in Cairns. So it's quite famous for the Great Barrier Reef. So getting your paddy, learning to scuba dive, going snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. There's also loads of adrenaline things you can do. So like skydiving, bungee jumping, loads of people do that there. And there's also the Atherton Tablelands and the Daintree Rainforest. So I would highly recommend you go on Uncle Brian's tour of both of those areas. So Atherton Tablelands, Daintree Rainforest. They are separate day tours, or you can do a combined one where you then do an overnight stay in an eco lodge. It's just top vibes. It's like you're going on a school trip and we just have a good time. I was the second oldest person there. There was also, was she called Janet? This absolute babe who was like in her 60s and just had the most excellent travel stories. She also went on the trip. So there's not an age limit. Like, yes, it's going to be like younger backpackers, but it's such inclusive vibes. I had a really good time, and it's just like, I've still talked to people from that trip, and I'm hoping to meet up with a couple of them. So that's nice vibes. And then Cairns itself, you've got the Esplanade on the front with like the big wheel, and you've got the Cairns Lagoon as well, because I don't think you can get on the beach because it's all, I don't think it's sandy there. Like Cairns itself is fine if you stay to the front. If you go a bit further back, it's a little bit ropey. But we stayed in an Airbnb like outside of Cairns, which was beautiful. There was no public transport for a mile, but the party hostel that people stay in Cairns is called Gilligan's. If you want a party hostel, there we go. But there's a YHA there as well. And then I think that's it. That's all I've got to say about backpacking the East Coast, if I'm honest. There will be places that I've missed out because I didn't go to all of them, and I didn't do like the classic backpacker activities. I didn't stay in hostel dorms. I stayed in like a couple of dorms, but because I was traveling with my sister, we just got private rooms because it wasn't that much more expensive. So if you have any questions from this, please let me know. Obviously this information is correct as of like February 2024. Also, if there's anything that I say wrong in this video, please put it in the comments so that people aren't relying on wrong information. I am going back to Australia, which I'm very excited about. I will be doing largely the same spots that I've done before, but doing different things and doing them like in more depth, and going to some new places as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.